to talk to you about contracts. There's a lot of people who are wanting to get out of them as far as dairying is concerned at the moment. Is it possible?
Depends on the contract. There are ways, if a contract's been breached, to maybe cancel it or whatever, but it's not very easy. It's obviously you need to get advice, look at the particular contract.
Because I'd imagine there's a lot of farm owners who would be very comfortable if the share milker who's losing $500,000 quietly goes somewhere else, but they're not going to go anywhere else, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a contract, if it's in writing and, you know, if it's been properly prepared, it will be enforceable, whoever looking to enforce it, and yes, it's not easy to get out of. Key thing is getting advice early on it.
Yep.
It's sometimes find with farmers they might not have actually read the whole contract, so the first step, read the contract, get a copy to your lawyer, get advice on it.
Because there must, and you as a lawyer would know, there's got to be a lot of people who simply just let them roll through. Did the same thing for you, the last share milker, so it'll be fine for this one.
Yes, exactly right, and you know, sometimes the contract may not entirely cover the situation where that's evolved, and what I find is it's actually better to sit down and try and negotiate a way out of it. We can often talk to the other side and see if there's a way of maybe amending the terms and coming up with an agreement which will actually work a bit better.
I mean, is there, I know that each individual case is an individual case, but negotiating, I mean, if you're going to lose $500,000, that's $250,000 each, or $250,000.
Yeah.
It would be a case of saying, well, we're going to lose that money anyway, so let's do a cash settlement and bail each other out.
Exactly, and generally we look at pragmatic solutions there to try and make sure that, you know, neither side will come out too badly, and there's a commercial incentive to actually amend and vary the contract to do that.
Because I mean, look at the dairy cattle at the moment; they've halved the price; they're down to $1,000, and they'll be less than that as more come onto the market.
Yeah, I think all dairy grazing contracts, I've heard of situations where you know, the dairy farmer's looking to maybe not honour the contract, and we would have a look at it and then just see what the consequence would be if that happened. And there are quite strong legal remedies for breach of contract too, if the sums are big enough to warrant the expense of going to court.
Because that's another thing. Did they end up in court?
It's a very costly procedure to go to court, and it's something we try and avoid most of the time, unless, as I say, the figures are big enough.
And once again, it's each individual thing, but the courts obviously try to do the best for the person who's doing the suing.
Yeah, obviously they have to look at it and, you know, consider just what the rights and wrongs in each situation are. But to file and go to court sort of $15,000, $20,000 before you've really got past step one, so it's not a cheap process, and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and so, in the meantime, the payouts aren't getting any better, exactly, and the time's going on and on and on.
One thing
and
also,
the atmosphere's not great.
No, it's not. There are often dispute resolution provisions in contracts, and that's probably one of the first things we'd have a look at, and just follow that dispute resolution procedure, which might avoid the costly court proceedings.
Share milkers don't have much of a help because they're not getting that 50 cents advance, which the landowners are or can do, the shareholders for Fonterra. So they're going into voluntary liquidation in some cases. Yeah,
that's obviously depend on the assets that usually a company will have, and the liquidation process, it might be worth looking at. If there's a lot of assets there, it might not be, but that is an option.
Once again, go to your lawyer and say, well, you know, I really need to get out because I can't afford to lose $500,000.
Yeah, we would hope that people actually contact us before the problem gets too big. It's much easier if you're involved early in the process rather than sort of right at the end when things have got to the
You want to be the fence at the top of the cliff, don't you?
Definitely. And people often see the lawyer as sort of a transactional person to be involved, but I think, you know, good lawyers, particularly, you know, involved in the rural sector, can give pragmatic advice right at the start.
Would you advocate having a solicitor with an accountant and probably a bank manager in there?
Definitely. We always try and work with the accountant and bank manager, not separately from them, and it might be just a phone call to get the background and make sure you know the full picture. It certainly helps.
Yep. Modern day, you can help anybody anywhere around New Zealand.
Exactly. We've got clients all over the place. You know, it can be Skype calls, email. It doesn't really matter.
Isn't it amazing how we've come a long way? Because,
exactly.
You know, having to drive in to see the solicitor is gone.
It has gone, and particularly as rural broadband's expanding, it's getting better.
changing the subject to cropping, once again we've got a situation you mentioned about dairy support, but dry years and you can't produce enough barley for the contract that you've signed?
That's a real problem because the supply agreements often have penalty clauses as well. So it is a real problem for a supplier who can't meet the obligations, and often they have to see if they can source product from elsewhere to meet the needs of the contract.
Because invariably those contracts are put out by the person who's buying the grain, not the person who's selling it.
Yeah, exactly. So I've heard of situations where the sellers have had to actually buy grain off other suppliers to meet their obligations.
Yeah, and that's going to get expensive.
It does.
There's nothing more expensive than somebody else having what you need.
Yeah. Again, it's this comes back, if you're going to sign a contract, you need to be aware of what's in it, get advice before you sign it.
Lawyers, go and see them. That's
Definitely.
Your message, isn't it?
Yes. Get advice early. It can save a lot in the end.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, because it is a very interesting situation and each one of those is very, very individual.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay.